here's a little story beginning to right now of how I grew up very left-leaning, not understanding anything about politics and not particularly being involved in politics at all. Now at 25, still not being involved in politics. I have made the decision to present as far away from the left as almost humanly possible, because I cannot anymore take the insanity and the wokeness. I was a man-hating feminist and I am so embarrassed about it. Have you ever felt depressed? Well, no. Have you ever been denied opportunities because you're a woman? No. When you yourself can admit that in your life that has not directly disadvantaged you, how dare you say that? I can't defend this. You're right. Me, I can't defend this. I can't say stuff like that. And then I watched a video where I believe Dr. Seuss and another children's author, Roald Dahl. So I think this is the dude that came up with Matilda. Words like fat are being taken out. So in one of the books, and I think this is Willy Wonka, the word enormously fat was taken out and the word enormous was just left in there. That's dark. To me, that is so dark. We have books like, was it To Kill a Mockingjay or Mockingbird? I've never personally read it, but a class that my friend was in had to read it for English literature. So we need to look at these things to understand it, to learn from it.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. I recently asked you guys over on my Instagram stories what videos you would like to see me make responses to, kind of debunk, react to, that sort of thing. I feel like I haven't done a video response video in a while. I'm saying video a lot. Video. So that's what I'm doing today. One of the most recommended ones was to take a look at this video by YDHB called Why I'm Leaving the Left. Now, I had no idea who this person was before I got this suggestion, and it's surprisingly hard to find info about her online. Through her Instagram, I found that her name's Sara. Through this particular video, I found out she's 25, and that was kind of about it. That's all she's really put about herself online, which is fine, you know, it's all good. Not everyone's like me and, you know, has their whole life story on their website. But really, she just kind of seems like any other English woman, just like myself. Unremarkable, you know? But I looked through her channel and I did find this whole Why I'm Leaving the Left video a little odd, because if you look at her other recent videos and her most popular YouTube videos, nothing about this old content screams left-leaning to me. I don't know, maybe she deleted some old content that she doesn't agree with anymore. That's fine, it's what people do. I've removed old videos that I don't agree with myself on anymore, that sort of thing. It's part of growing up, right? Growing and changing and evolving as content creators, it's normal. I've nothing more to say about that. But seriously, these video titles just kind of scream typical right-wing fear-mongering to me, looking at these as an outsider, that is. So my shock comes more from her ever having been a part of the left than her saying she's leaving it, if that makes sense. I mean, like, look, you've got videos on, like, Velma is a garbage can on fire. Seems like an odd phrase for an English woman to use, but there we are. Hogwarts Legacy game is cancelled. Is Gen Z woke and lazy? Fat activists say she's repulsed by fat men. Fat acceptance cringe and double standards. Oh, look, she's just released one 2 hours ago. This children's book is encouraging them to research their kinks online. Parents beware. Yeah, this is just very typical right-wing fear-mongering stuff. This is exactly the same stuff that we see from people like Blair White, Girl Defined. I want to say Shoe on Head? Isn't she right? I don't know. People have always said I'd like her videos, but I never have. I don't know, I've not seen that many. Anyway, not the point. Very typical of this sort of stuff. I don't know. Anyway, so this whole I'm leaving the left thing surprises me based on these video titles. So before watching this video, I decided to do a little bit of research first. Apparently there's a whole snark subreddit dedicated to her, which I'm conflicted about. On the one hand, I feel like I do feel sorry for her, you know? It seems mean to have a whole subreddit dedicated to people complaining about you. But on the other, I'm like, God, what did she do that made so many people so upset that they decided to do this? Because that's not a low effort thing. That's not one person leaving a mean comment every now and again. That's people moderating and posting regularly to a subreddit and having all these comments. Like, that's a lot of angry people. So I'm conflicted. I found this one thread that kind of summarize why people don't like her. Apparently YDHB is short for Young Dumb Honey Bun, which is a UK-based YouTube channel that reacts to YouTuber Amberlynn Reid. This channel is owned by Sara. She is a young 20-something who lives with her fiancé Owen and their dog. Apparently a lot of people don't like her because she makes a lot of content about Amberlynn Reid. Like, basically she got famous and big for fat shaming her, apparently. She's often quite offensive and like a little obsessive about covering her stuff, apparently. Other people don't like her because she seems to have lied about some stuff in her background, like her education and her qualifications. Other people don't like her because she heavily filters her Instagram posts, which I have to admit is also a bit of a pet hate of mine. It bothers me when people look different from their photos to reality, but that's just a personal preference. And a whole bunch of other stuff. Some of it really doesn't seem too bad, and it feels a bit like people might just be picking on things because they don't like her. Other things do genuinely seem really bad. I've seen a few instances of her being quite transphobic. I saw a few instances where people said she'd been homophobic, but I didn't see evidence of that, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So in those cases, yeah, completely understand the not liking her. All that said, I did see on Sarah's Instagram account that she has lots of stories of people messaging her saying how much she's helped them with their mental health and other things. So clearly she is doing something right. Clearly there is a reason why she got fans in the first place, and mixed feelings, not really sure what to think of her. I went into this video with quite an open mind, made up my mind what I thought of her about halfway through, but we'll get to that. I've got script notes on certain bits of the video that we're going to be reacting to, but these notes are all basically my initial reactions as I was watching the video, so you're going to be watching me talk about this kind of with my opinions unfolding as they did in real time the first time I watched it, if that makes sense. One more thing I will say before we start this video is this. I find the whole labels around political ideologies thing a little bit difficult, and I sometimes find labels a little bit stifling. I get people asking me if I'm right or left-leaning a lot in the comments, and I find it difficult to answer because sometimes I worry that these labels can be a little too restricting. If I say I'm left-leaning, then people are going to be like, oh, so you must believe blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, no. I believe X, Y, and Z, therefore I'm left-leaning, not I'm left-leaning, therefore I believe X, Y, and Z. It's also why I avoided the feminist label for quite a long time, especially when I first started YouTube. I was almost afraid to use that label. I was worried about what people would think it meant. Now I'm like, no, screw this, I'm owning the label, I'm taking it back. Feel good about it. But I've always felt like, you know, I believe in equal rights, I believe in this and this and this, and that's why I'm a feminist, rather than what a lot of people online seem to assume, which is, oh, you're a feminist, so you must think X, Y, Z. That's the wrong way around, that's backwards. I also feel like just using labels like left and right leaning is a little too overly simplistic, a little too black and white. It doesn't really cover the full spectrum of beliefs that a person can have. I know that when it comes to political stuff, you could probably summarize that I'm more left-leaning, but ultimately I have my own personal beliefs about equality, social care, education, healthcare, the environment, and so on. And each of those stances on the individual topics influences who I vote for. In the last, 12 years that I've been voting, I've voted for a mix of Labour MPs and Green MPs, depending on where I've been living and which particular MP I've preferred at the time. I think it's important to remember that my beliefs inform my voting decisions and my beliefs inform my labels, not the other way round. I wouldn't just vote for someone because they're Labour. I need to vote for them because I believe in the same things that they do. I have the same values as them. I like their policies and so on. That said, I've never found a Tory MP I agree with, so take that as you will. So, anyway, with all this in mind, when someone says, I'm leaving the left, I'm like, so what does that actually mean? Does that mean your beliefs have changed? Do you not want to use the label anymore? What exactly do you mean by this? And that's why I want to watch this video and find out. I know I'm kind of watching it because I was asked to, but also when I heard the title, it intrigued me, and I was like, let's see where this goes. So let's just jump into Sarah's video. Let's start watching together.
And I also want to respect myself enough to understand that this is a big part of me growing up. I am approaching 25, and I think that these are the values and morals that I have thought about, I have debated on, I have really came to understand through therapy and through self-reflection, and these are the values that I want to take into my marriage and take into my family life, and I think that it is very important.
Okay, so this was interesting to me straight away, right? Because Sarah is around the same age now that I was when I started making YouTube videos, and I know that in those 5 or whatever years, my own opinions have grown and changed and I've matured a lot. But 25 is a difficult age because by that time you're independent, you feel like an adult, you might have a partner, some people might have kids, you might have a pet, you've got a home, you've got a job, you've got responsibilities, you feel like you're a grown-up, and suddenly you have all these ideas and they kind of fit into place and you're like, oh my god, I feel so much different about this and this than I did when I was younger, therefore I'm an adult now, so these are my opinions. And then you get a bit older and you realise, hang on, your opinions don't just set in stone when you feel like an adult, they still continue to grow and change and evolve, and my opinions on things, some are the same as when I was 25, some are quite different. Some of them I just needed to learn more and open my eyes a little bit more. Some of them, my experiences have changed what I've thought. Like, there's lots of stuff going on. I also think if you're anything like I was at that age when I was 25, you're likely still a little bit insecure. You care a lot about what other people think of you and what the people around you think of you, and it doesn't go away, but it does reduce slightly as you get older, you know? I know at that age when I was 25, I was very influenced by my partner and his views, and I wanted to impress him. And I knew from the beginning when we met that our values didn't entirely align, but I felt like in order to keep him and be happy and have someone, I did have to change my own views slightly to fit more with his. I had to compromise, I had to play to his views a bit more, and then I started to get older and I was like, hang on a minute. This doesn't really feel very me. This doesn't feel very authentic. This isn't working for me. And I realised that it was better to stay true to my values and be on my own than it was to compromise my values just to stay in a relationship with someone. So breaking up with him was like a big, big step forward for me in learning more about myself and my views and my values and my beliefs, and learning to accept them a little bit more, and also then going out into the world and trying to find a partner who did align with those values. That was a huge step for me as well, and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. The point I'm trying to make is, at 25, I can understand why this is clearly some sort of like transitional period for Sara. Maybe she's likely trying to figure out herself, who she is, where she wants to go with her channel, her work, her life, her job, her career, her everything. And it's important to remember that while she's saying these things now, this doesn't mean these are what her views are going to be like forever. She might change her mind again in another 5 years, another 10 years, another 20, and it's important that we're open to allowing her to grow and change her mind more, you know? Throwing that out there.
Here's a little story beginning to right now of how I grew up very left-leaning, not understanding anything about politics and not particularly being involved in politics at all, to now at 25, still not being involved in politics, still not associating myself with one particular group. However, I have made the decision to present as far away from the left as almost humanly possible, because I cannot anymore take the insanity and the contradiction and the wokeness anymore.
I've got to be honest, right from the beginning, this whole thing of not understanding anything and still not really being involved but wanting to talk about it is a bit of a red flag for me. If you don't understand something, it's okay to not want to talk about it publicly. Saying, I'm not really involved, I don't know enough, so I'm not going to comment, is a completely reasonable and okay stance to take. However, I'm not really involved and I don't know enough, so I think it's all insane and stupid, isn't really okay. That worries me. It makes me dubious about everything you're going to say after this, and I find myself coming into this video not really trusting Sara, not really, I'm trying to say this without sounding like snobby or elitist, or I feel like she's probably not informed enough about the topics she's going to speak about for me to trust anything she's saying or really value her opinion. Also, using terms like the insanity and the wokeness just suggests to me that she's, like, if she does have sources where she's trying to learn about this stuff, it suggests to me that she's probably listening more to what oppositional extremists say about the left than actual left-leaning sources, like actual politicians or academics, or looking at completely, like, independent research and that sort of thing. So I am wary going into this, and as you'll see towards the end, I think I was right to be. I'm trying so hard to not be patronising. It's really hard to get my tone right in this. It's, you know, I'm autistic and I struggle with tone and expressing myself, and I'm finding it really hard to, like, get across what I'm feeling here without sounding like a bitch. I'm trying really hard. I'm sorry. Okay, so Sara's going to tell us a little bit about her background here, and this is quite interesting.
When I was 16 or 17, I went to do my A-levels. I took sociology for 2 years and psychology for 2 years. That's when my journey began. And I think one of the most influential classes there was sociology. I loved it. I never ended up doing anything with it because I couldn't see myself kind of, progressing in the field, but I was very good at it. I think that was the only thing that I was good at, as well as being passionate about. And I loved the discussions that we had because it was such a safe space with so many different people.
Okay, so me and Sarah actually have quite similar backgrounds in terms of A-levels. I didn't do psychology like she did, but I did sociology as well. I also did biology, English literature, and media studies, and we all had general studies. So yeah, one of my 5 A-levels was the same as Sarah's, and it was a fun course. I really enjoyed it. It was interesting. It opened me up to these new ideas. It got me having discussions that I hadn't really had before, and like Sarah, I was good at it. I got full marks in every sociology exam up until the last one when my teacher left and there was some stuff going on. I think the problem that I have with the way Sarah speaks about all this stuff in the rest of this video is that it doesn't really feel like she's moved on from the level of thought that was necessary and that was taught in those classes. Sociology at A-level is fun, but it's still very basic, it's very surface level. It's like, this sociologist thought this, whereas this one thought this, and now in society we see this, and here are the stats to back this up. What do you think? It doesn't really get into the details, it doesn't really examine those little nitty-gritty grey areas, it doesn't get specific. It's quite surface level. For example, not quite sociology here, more sort of, I guess, economics and politics, but here she is talking about communism and capitalism.
And I remember one of the discussions was between me and a couple of other friends and the teacher, and she was basically proposing, why wouldn't you want to live in a capitalist, society? Why wouldn't you want to, have everyone be equal? And I remember thinking, that is so crazy. I remember thinking, how could you ever hear about this and even consider it? Because coming from someone whose mum still remembers what communism was like in Poland, to come into someone who has never experienced it and has just learned about it and is like, why wouldn't you want that? That's so great. I couldn't fathom it. It couldn't fit into my brain that someone just suggested that a neurosurgeon and a cleaner, or a neurosurgeon and a mechanic, could be paid the same and be compensated the same for the jobs that were so completely different. It was so insane to me. I have never met anyone from my country, or even I have Ukrainian friends, can say that the parents or the family or anyone remembers communism in a favourable light.
So I think there's a little bit of misspeaking here on Sarah's part. I'm assuming her friend was saying, why would you want to live in a capitalist society? And her friend's idealising communism, or rather maybe, why wouldn't you want to live in a communist society, instead of what Sarah said, which was, why wouldn't you want to live in a capitalist society? I think she misspoke here. That's fine, forgivable, everyone does it. I stumble over my words all the time. You should see how many takes I have to do to say words in my videos. And then she goes on to talk about how her family lived in a communist society growing up and they hated it. And then she summarised communism as being like a neurosurgeon and a cleaner being paid the same amount, which is just an oversimplification and misrepresentation of everything. Now, this kind of political theory and this kind of economic theory and stuff is not my strong point. I'm not going to sit here and lecture you about communism because it's not my area of expertise. But from the basics that I do know, we need to acknowledge that in the real world, hell yeah, there are a lot of issues with communism, but there are also a lot of issues with capitalism. Neither system is completely perfect, and we need to be able to weigh up the pros and cons of both and ultimately try and find a balance. But then we also have to realise that society is never going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect balance, whether it's communism or capitalism or somewhere in between or any other system. Sadly, someone is always going to be on top. Someone is always going to be oppressed. That's kind of just how the world works. And also these power imbalances are always going to be shifting and changing, and there are going to be more and less people in different groups at different times and all sorts of things like this because society is imperfect. But as responsible individuals, we need to be aware of these, and we need to try and be aware of these inequalities and fight to change them as much as we can. We can't just sit there and be like, communism bad, capitalism good, because that's ignoring some of the huge problems with capitalism. And we can't just be there and be like, well, this is the way it is, let's not change it. But we also can't just be like, oh, you know what we should do? Let's just overhaul the whole system. That's going to work. Because again, that won't work either. It's far more complex than this. There are so many constantly shifting shades of grey in this conversation. It's alright to talk about these things in theory, and, you know, this theory works here and this doesn't work here and this sort of thing, but then in the real world, it's not always going to be possible, and you have to be aware of those things when you have these discussions, and basically it's just a lot more complex than Sara is making out, and it kind of shows to me that I don't think she has the level of critical thinking required to discuss these topics in the way that she's trying to here, and I don't think she has the background knowledge to do it either. Then she goes on to talk about transgender people getting medical treatment, getting hormone therapies, getting surgeries, and so on, and there's quite a bit of misinformation in this.
I was taught a lot of things, and this isn't a while ago, this is like 2019 that I graduated. I was taught things that now are considered problematic or even bigoted. So let's take, for example, gender dysphoria. I was taught that this is a mental disorder in which the body and the brain essentially feel like they shouldn't be going together. A person's feeling dysphoric, they're feeling a variety of very negative emotions, anxiousness, insecurity, a lot of negative emotions specifically towards their body, and that, I was taught, needs to be addressed with intensive therapy and working out and prioritizing this person's health, mental health and physical health, and putting forward a plan as to what this person needs, whether that be medical transition or whether that be intensive therapy. That's what I was taught. But now, apparently that makes you a medicalist and a bigot, because you deny people who identify as trans to simply go in and have surgeries and have transition without prior diagnosis.
So none of this is right. No one's trying to say that trans individuals shouldn't have therapy and treatment. No one is saying that gender dysphoria isn't something that needs treatment. And her very vague description here is an oversimplification of what gender dysphoria is and how it can present in different people, and also the different treatments available for it. And no one is calling anyone a bigot for wanting to support people through gender dysphoria. That's a complete straw man, it's ridiculous, that's just not happening in the real world. She's also completely misrepresenting what a transmedicalist is. Generally, transmedicalists believe that you can only be transgender if you have gender dysphoria and seek medical and or surgical treatment to correct it. That's not what Sara's representing here. In the eyes of a lot of transmedicalists, if you don't want surgery, you're not a real transgender person. There are quite a few content creators online who believe in this stuff, and while I'm trying to get the words right here, while I understand where they're coming from and why they might think that way, I don't personally agree with it, and I think they're wrong. It's not a viewpoint that I support. It's complicated because when talking about this, because I don't agree with transmedicalism, but also what Sara's talking about isn't transmedicalism. It very odd. The issues Sara's talking about revolve around, I think, denying people access to surgery and treatments and stuff like that, which is another issue within itself. But, you know, I'm going to leave this for people more qualified than me to talk about, you know? It seems to me that Sara here is talking about, and with her talking about background, claim to be an expert on things that she doesn't fully understand. And she goes on to admit that she's not up to date with this kind of knowledge. She admits that there have been huge changes since she was in uni in 2019, and she's claiming to be the victim because these things are changing and people won't listen to her anymore, and it's just odd, and it bothers me. Yeah, our understanding of medicine and treatment and mental health issues and issues around gender have changed in the last few years. They're constantly changing. That's part of working in the health field, the medical field, the science field, any of it. Her sitting here and trying to use this defense of like, oh, 2019 wasn't even that long ago, but then being shocked by how quickly things are changing. Yeah, that's just how science and healthcare works. As we learn more, we have to adjust our actions accordingly in order to help people in the best way we can. That's how the world works. Imagine if this was with anything else other than like a gender issue, right? Imagine back in, like, what was it, the 50s, the 60s, something like that. If doctors just kept prescribing thalidomide to pregnant women because, what, it was fine a couple of years ago, I don't see what the problem is. The way I was taught it was we give them thalidomide, so we're going to keep doing it. No, Once you realise that there's a problem with giving people that drug and that it causes abnormal fetal development, then you stop giving it. Once you realise there's a better way to do something, you change your way of doing it. It's that simple. You can't sit there and complain that, oh, things are moving too quickly. Back in my day, this wasn't what we were taught. Because you chose to go into that field. You know that it's a constantly changing and growing field. There's a reason that people who work in healthcare have to do CPD, continued professional development, which basically are a series of like courses, tests, sort of almost like coursework they have to do, stuff like that, to keep their skills and knowledge up to date. Literally every person I know who works even tangentially in healthcare has to do this. My sister-in-law who's a GP, my sister's best friend who's a pharmacist. Back when I worked in a pharmacy, everyone who worked behind the medicine counter had to do it. You have to keep up to date in medicine and healthcare and science. She then goes on to say that anyone who disagrees with her is just like, oh, a 16-year-old with TikTok, which I find a little dismissive, to be honest, and it really bothers me.
And so to see young people now who, in a lot of these cases, have not been educated to any kind of degree about this, who have maybe taken gender studies, saying things like, you shouldn't want to fix disability, you shouldn't want to treat disability, you shouldn't want to diagnose gender dysphoria, that is a bigoted term and we shouldn't do this, puts me at a crisis. That now a 20-year-old is telling me that's not how it is, or a 16-year-old is telling me, well, then that's bigoted and it makes you this kind of person. And it put me at this very unpleasant place where I'm like, am I listening to the individuals that have been educated, that are clinicians that are working for example, the NHS, or do I listen to someone on TikTok?
It seems to me that she's had some people, especially transgender people, who've been through this, who are living this, who know their own bodies and minds, and they know their own experiences with the healthcare system and everything. It seems to me that they've come to her and said, actually, this is a problem, you know, here are where the issues are, here's when we need help. And she's turning around and being like, oh, you're just a bunch of 16-year-olds with TikTok. And I'm like, that's not really fair, is it? It feels quite dismissive. It bothered me.
What is happening? Because if you dare to question it, you cannot have debates with people anymore either. I'm seeing this thing where even asking questions means that you are against them. You see this in so many cases where simply asking someone, what about the alternative? Why don't we do this? Makes you an enemy and like immediately means that you are against them. So my question is, how do we progress as humans? How do we find new ways of doing things? How do we evolve if we are not allowed to ask questions?
I think there's very different things going on here. Like, she's like complaining like, oh, asking questions are bad these days. But the example she gives isn't just asking a question, it's outright disagreeing with and dismissing someone through a question. But it's very different. So, you know, asking questions around let's take transgender issues and stuff like that. Asking questions in this setting might involve things like asking, why do you feel this way? Can you explain to me what this feels like for you? How long have you felt this way? What treatments have you tried? What does your doctor say? What are your options going forward? How can a person help you feel safe and comfortable? That's asking questions to learn more. What Sarah's doing here is not asking a question, but saying, you know what, I'm not okay with giving you what you want, let's do something else instead. Which, again, isn't asking a question to learn more, it's just being dismissive. And that approach of saying, hey, maybe that's not right, let's try something else, isn't inherently a bad thing, not at all. But it's important to recognise that that's what you're doing, and not just passing it off as like, ugh, can't even ask a question these days. It's like going up to someone and saying to them, oh, why is your entire gender or race or, put any other group in here, so stupid and ugly and weird? And then when that person gets upset by it, going, oh, you can't even ask a question these days. Because the issue isn't with asking a question, it's that you were throwing insults at them. That's what's happening here. You're not just asking a question, you're being dismissive and telling them they can't do things that they're saying are likely to help them, you know? You know what I'm trying to say. I feel like I'm rambling a bit, sorry. Oh, then she goes on a whole rant about why she's not a feminist anymore. I'm so tired of women like this.
I was a man-hating feminist, and I am so embarrassed about it, but at the same time I think it's time that I take ownership of it and say, you know what, yeah, and I've grown from that, and I'm stepping into adulthood with new ideas. I was the first one to be like, men have oppressed women for so long, and that everything that's wrong with the world, and white cis het men are just like the spawn of Satan. Like, It's so embarrassing. I look back now at a college argument that I had with someone talking about the pay gap, talking about the gender pay gap, and this dude was like, listen to yourself. And he was talking to me, he was citing evidence, and I was so determined to just not listen to any of it, to be like, no, I don't care, this is what happens, this is what it is, having no idea, no evidence, nothing to back it up with. But I was convinced that I was right, and I was convinced that he was wrong. And I cringe.
Honestly, now I'm the one cringing. Seriously, like, can't you see that the problem here isn't that you were a feminist? It's that, one, you describe yourself as a man-hater. That's not feminist, that's just douchey. That is a problem. And two, the problem is that you are apparently arguing for things with no evidence and with no idea of what you are really talking about. You literally admit it here.
Having no idea, no evidence, nothing to back it up with, but I was convinced.
It doesn't matter what side you're on. Arguing without knowledge and without really knowing why you're arguing is a bad thing, whether you're feminist or anti-feminist. And it feels to me like you've just switched from feminist to anti-feminist, but you still don't have that underlying knowledge. You don't really know why you believe the things you do. And she goes on to talk about feminism, and that becomes really, really apparent. Listen to this.
Because it got to a point when no one else had to tell me that, but I had to stand there and say, okay, you say things like, you hate all men. Do you hate your father? No, God no, he's the most hard-working, loving man I've ever known. Do you hate your brothers? Do you hate your fiancé? Do you hate your male friends? Well, no. So how can you say that? And I know that this is maybe like a little example, but it starts at the roots. How can you say that? How can you say such a generalized thing?
It's like, tell me you don't understand feminism without saying you don't understand feminism.
Are you oppressed right now? Well, it depends what you mean. Well, have you ever felt oppressed? Well, no. Have you ever been denied opportunities because you're a woman? No. Have you ever been denied opportunities because you are an immigrant and a woman? Well, no. I've actually become exactly who I want to be, and I have been granted so many more opportunities because I was a woman and because I am an immigrant. And so, what are you talking about right now? We're not talking about globally, we're talking about right now in your everyday life. What is it that supports your logic of I hate all men, they are the evil of the society, I am oppressed because I am a woman and I have been denied all of these opportunities, when you yourself can admit that in your life that has not directly disadvantaged you? How dare you say that? And I felt so terrible about it, and I sat there thinking about these things, reading books and, watching videos and thinking about this and questioning what I've been saying all this time, and I thought, I can't defend this. You're right, me. I can't defend this. I can't say stuff like that because it's not true.
Okay, and if that's the case, that is great for you. I'm happy for you, seriously. But these opportunities that you think you're getting just because you're a woman, you're getting them because of feminism, thanks to feminism. And just because you have these opportunities, just because you as an individual don't feel oppressed, that doesn't mean that other people aren't. There are plenty of people today who are oppressed. There are plenty of people who don't have the opportunities that you do. Plenty of women who don't have the opportunities that you do. Feminism isn't just about, what's good for me as an individual. It is about gender equality for all. I've been spoken down to and told I'm not as intelligent as a man just because of my gender. I've been told I'll never succeed in certain fields because of my gender. I've been spoken down to and disrespected by men, including other content creators on YouTube, just because I'm a woman. I've been groped in public without my consent. I've been called a slut and a whore daily, just because I'm a woman online. I've been followed home by men. I've had to take off my shoes and run down the street in the dark because it's not safe for me to walk alone. I've had a police officer question my domestic violence report and ask me, yeah, but what did you do to provoke him? Because men don't just get violent for no reason, do they? I've had people assume I unlessen my partner just because I'm a woman. I have musician friends who are fighting daily because they apply to festivals where the lineups are 75% men. They try and record only to head into the studio and find it's full of men. They hire photographers only to find it's mostly men. I have friends who get questioned and misgendered and verbally abused in public and risk being assaulted just because they're trying to pee while being transgender. I have women emailing me almost every week saying that they want to leave their faith, but they're terrified about what their family's going to do to them if they do, but they're also terrified about what's going to happen to them if they stay. There are women who are afraid to leave their homes. There are women who can't leave their homes without a male escort. There are women who aren't allowed to drive, who aren't allowed to have bank accounts, who aren't allowed to get divorced. There are women who are blamed for the violence perpetuated against them. There are women in the world who are oppressed and who need help, and that's what we have feminism for. Just because you, as an individual, are in a place of privilege, that doesn't mean there aren't other women out there who need our support, who need our voices to stand up for them, who need us to say, no, this is not okay. I'm glad that you've never been oppressed, Sarah, but feminism is not just about you. You're not the only woman in the world, and I wish you would open your eyes and show some damn compassion and think about someone else for a change. Yeah? Get out of your little bubble and realise that there's more women in the world than you. 3.5 billion other women who need our help and support and our voices. And what you're doing by sitting here going, I was so cringy because I was just a feminist, but you know, I'm not oppressed. What you're doing is silencing them more. You're undermining their struggles, their suffering, you're leaving them in danger. People like you make it worse for them. I've used the word privilege in my videos before. I've used it to speak about people like classically Abby and Kristen and Bethany from Girl Defined and that sort of thing. And I think it can be quite a sort of, dare I say, triggering word for some people, because they hear the word privilege and be like, oh, you think I should be ashamed of myself because I had this and this? No, that's not what we talk about when we talk about privilege. Sarah is clearly a very privileged individual. I'll admit that in some ways, I've been a very privileged individual as well. Despite the background I grew up in, I am a cisgender white woman, and that does give me certain advantages over other people. Now, that's not saying that's something I have to be ashamed of, but it is something I have to be aware of and realise that while there are difficulties in my life, there are other things that make it easier for me than other people. And that means that I need to be compassionate to other people's struggles and be like, damn, you know what, this isn't easy for them. I need to bear this in mind. I need to help elevate their voices. I need to help speak out to make sure they get equal and fair opportunities. I need to be aware of these inequalities and help other people who aren't as fortunate as me in the areas where I am fortunate. And the areas where I'm not as fortunate, hopefully other people will stand up for me and use their privileges and their advantages to help give me a voice. That's what it means when we talk about privilege. Sarah seems incapable of recognising her own privilege, and because of that, she fails to recognise the disadvantages that others have, and she's not speaking out for them, and if anything, she's oppressing them more. By saying, well, I've never been oppressed, so I don't need feminism, you are literally standing on top of oppressed women who are crying out for help and saying, yeah, but I don't hear you, so you don't really count, you're not here. We don't need this entire ideology because it's okay, I'm fine. You guys just stay down, okay? Shh, shh. We don't need feminism. You guys stay down there, in the house, as property, where you belong. Okay, I'm exaggerating now because I'm being very snarky. The more I watch her video and the more I talk about this, the angrier I'm getting, I'm going to be honest.
Society, who keeps it running? My dad gets up at 4 in the morning to go to work, even though he has been retired for years and he doesn't need to work. But he wants to because he finds a passion in his work and he thinks he's, giving something back to the world by doing that and fixing things and, helping his family. He feels useful. He keeps the world running, and so do a lot of men. What about the men that are fighting in wars and things like that? Do you hate them too? And I was so embarrassed, because it's like, how can you say stuff like that when you can't actually defend it?
Oh, for God's sake, can we stop pretending that, oh my God, it's men who run the world, without men we wouldn't be here? Do you have any idea how much women do as well? How much women have contributed in the past? I asked in one of my videos, like, it was a transformed wife video, and Laurie said something like, oh, what have women leaving the home ever done for people? And I asked you guys in the comments to leave some examples, and people came up with the women of Bletchley Park during World War II. They came up with women like Ada Lovelace. They came up with Marie Curie and all these kinds of amazing people. And I also decided to look up the key worker stats during COVID, and in 2020, during the height of COVID, looking at the numbers of key workers, in the UK, almost 60% were women. In certain fields, that went up to 80%. Like in the healthcare field, 80% of key workers were women. Tell me now that men run the world. They don't. People run the world. This isn't a men or women do this and men do this and men do... No. humans do it. Sarah goes on this rant about, and my dad worked and my dad just, like, good, well done, your dad's an adult, like the rest of us. I also get up every day and go to work. My mum got up every day and went to work until she was too ill and had to retire. My sister does it, her wife soon-to-be wife, not married yet, her soon-to-be wife does it, my sister-in-law does it. Women do this. They get up and go to work just like men do. Your dad's not special, he's just an adult like the rest of us. Although, from what I've heard about Sarah, apparently she's never had to do this, so there we are.
I don't feel like I have been denied all of these things. And again, I'm not talking about globally, because I do recognise that there's these global cases and global instances that we need to speak about and we need to talk about. But again, I think that everyone is now in this binary, as ironic as that is. Everyone is now saying, well, if you don't believe that you are actively being oppressed, then you are denying that oppression exists. No, that's not true. I can say I am not oppressed and I don't feel it. I don't feel that me just being a woman and existing as a woman is a threat to my existence. However, I can recognise that that can be different to other people.
And here's the bit where she's just like, she comes straight out and says it. Okay, so it's not about whether you're a feminist or not. It's just about the fact that you, Sarah, are selfish and don't care about anyone but yourself, isn't it? You're making it very, very clear. And sorry, but like, no one in the world is saying, if you don't believe you're actively being oppressed and you're denying that oppression exists. No one is saying that. No one at all. But not everyone's as selfish as you. And I'm starting to see why people don't like her. I really am.
I also don't subscribe to this idea of saying that to other women. I don't think that we should sit there and say things like, just because you are a woman, then you are going to be capped because of the glass ceiling. You're never going to get to the top. All men are going to hate you and use you. I think that is such terrible, terrible advice, and I could never imagine looking at my daughter telling her men are your enemy. I am washing my hands of that ideology. I will not be one to continue that.
Yeah, again, no one is doing that. No one wants you to do that. You're strawmanning here big time. And I can't tell if it's stupidity or ignorance or both.
Another thing is that I've seen this video the other day, and I think that this was the video that finally pushed me to make this one. I am pro-choice. I will always be pro-choice. I believe that you should have a right to a healthy and safe abortion. I do believe that, and I always will, because I know that there's so many different circumstances. I think that that should be coupled with early and really good quality sex education, so that we can prevent unnecessary or unwanted pregnancy, so that we don't have to perform these abortions. However, I do think that education and preventative measures should go hand in hand before abortion is the last resort of because it has a big impact on an individual. But I will always be pro-choice. I will always understand that women have to have control over their bodies, and I do believe that. Why am I now seeing people who are so pro-choice that I actually would rather step away from them? I have seen this video of this woman who says that if she ever has an abortion, she's gonna have a party of aborted fetuses and aborted fetus themed party, and they're gonna have joy in that. They're gonna be so happy about it.
Straight up though, if I ever have to have an abortion, you bet I'm gonna have a fucking party. I'm gonna have cupcakes with aborted fetuses drawn on them, lots of snacks, I'm gonna come up with some sort of cocktail and call it the aborted fetus, and me and all of my friends are just gonna hang out, eat a bunch of yummy dead fetus.
I may be pro-choice, but that is borderline psychotic. There is being pro-choice and understanding the gravity of the situation you're talking about. So I don't want to be associated with people like that.
Yeah, see, that woman is not normal. She's not a typical feminist, and I think she's probably just trolling people after watching this video. She has to be, right? But the thing is, Sarah's view on abortion is something that I do agree with, and I would say that's definitely a more left-leaning view, but not the point, if we have to label it. But she doesn't want to use that label because of one extremist online who's probably trolling everyone. It's insane to me. Surely you realise that you can disagree with individuals you share a label with, or you share some ideas with, or you share some values with, without having to entirely throw them or the group or the other beliefs out, right? Just because you disagree on one topic, it doesn't mean you can't agree on other topics. It doesn't mean you have to completely distance yourself from everything they've ever done and everything they associate with. Oh my god, they were homophobic and they wore blue. Well, I can never wear blue again. That's what you sound like. Blah. Then she talks about comedians and, oh, quite like Ricky Gervais, and then she talks about censorship in books. She brings up the Roald Dahl thing, and I have mixed feelings on this. To some extent, I do agree with her. I do think that the censorship of his books was a little bit over the top and unnecessary in places. But the fact she's like, oh my god, this is so terrifying. This is just like 1984. I was listening to the audiobook and I thought, oh, this is like Roald Dahl. She just simply portrays it as censorship bad, boo the left, boo. And it's just too much of a simplistic view. It's too much black and white thinking.
But you know, I've again had a very controversial community post where I said, did you read 1984 by George Orwell, and do you see any similarities? And the reason I said that was because I was listening to it on Audible. And it was very weird, because I was listening to it on Audible, and there's a chapter in which they are basically going back and re-editing articles in newspapers in order to make it whatever the narrative is at the time in that society. And then I watched a video where I believe Dr. Seuss and another children's author and Roald Dahl. So I think this is the dude that came up with Matilda. Their books are being edited, and for example, words like fat are being taken out. So in one of the books, and I think this is Willy Wonka, the word enormously fat was taken out, and the word enormous was just left in there. So no one can be described in those books as fat anymore, but they can be described as enormous. I believe the word ugly was taken out, and the word beastly was put in. The concept of editing books that were written a while ago to fit the agenda and the political climate of today is terrifying to me. Terrifying. And I can't imagine why we're erasing that part of history to make it what it is now. That's dark. To me, that is so dark. And I don't agree with that. And I'm not going to be on the board with people who are like, yeah, this is great, let's do that. No.
The Roald Dahl example is far more complicated than she makes out. Dahl himself was censored and made changes to his books as he was writing them. This isn't the first time he's had his work changed or edited or censored, if you want to put it like that. As one article points out, this isn't the first time Dahl's stories have been edited to remove offensive material. The iconic singing, dancing Oompa Loompas of Wonka's Chocolate Factory were originally described as African pygmy people whom Wonka smuggled out of Africa in crates. In a 1973 revision of the book, Dahl rewrote the Oompa Loompas as fantastical creatures akin to pixies or dwarves. See? This has happened before, and I don't think that was a bad choice. I don't think that was stifling him. I think this is just a matter of making the books more palatable, less offensive. I mean, like, as the article goes on to say, nothing was lost in this change aside from a racist caricature, although it's notable that Dahl himself chose to make the edit. However, there are some of the recent edits that I do disagree with, such as this change from The Witches, for example. There's nothing particularly wrong with the new line here, it just seems to miss the point of the first line, which was, you can't go around pulling the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves. Just try it and see what happens. I think by changing this, you're removing the point of it, you know? It gets kids thinking critically for themselves and asking, well, why can't I? And then they start thinking and understanding themselves, well, what are some of the reasons why people might wear wigs? Why do they do this? Why is this okay? It completely normalizes the act of wearing wigs. It makes it acceptable in their head. And then they get that little joke at the end where, you know, kids can have a giggle at the thought of a naughty kid being told off or scolded for doing something wrong, you know? Critical thinking and then a little giggly joke. You don't get that in the edited version, and that's what I think it's missing and lacking. That said, there are some edits that aren't so bad, like I think the ones in Matilda, changing some of the authors and books she read. I don't see this as problematic. I think it still inspires a love of books. It just makes the books a little more relevant to today. Not a big deal. Others, like changing simple descriptive words, do seem a little bit silly and over the top to me, but I guess that's why they've repealed their decision. So I think it's a complex issue with lots and lots of grey areas where some things are okay, some things aren't. It's not just a simple, ooh, censorship, all bad, blah, 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 like Sara is making it out to be. I think she misses a lot of the points. I think she misses a lot of the understanding. I think as well, comparing it to 1984 is a little ignorant, perhaps. The problem was in 1984, they weren't just censoring new texts, they were changing the old ones. They were making sure there was no record of them. They were changing the way people think. With the Roald Dahl books, for example, the older versions of the books are still out there. Now, in fact, they're offering different versions. The older ones, unedited, and the newer ones, if you want to show them to your kids instead. They're allowing people their choice. They're not erasing history, they're not changing history, they're just trying to make things more relevant to the times. They probably went a little too far with it, but it's not a matter of hiding what happened before and trying to change that. It's just offering a new option instead, which again, there are some problems with, but the comparison just... no.
We have a lot of stuff that we need to learn from. We have books like, was it To Kill a Mockingjay or Mockingbird? I've never personally read it, but a class that my friend was in had to read it for English literature. And that is a very dark book. And that is about something that was very much a reality at the time, and it isn't now. So we need to look at these things to understand it, to learn from it. Imagine if we went back and edited it and then made it something different.
Seriously. I don't think I even want to dignify this lazy, ignorant point by responding to it. Maybe don't talk about a book if you don't even know what it's about. I'm not saying you even have to go out and read the whole thing for yourself, but maybe take 30 seconds to Google the synopsis, yeah? And then she's just like, blah, 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 labels are bad, blah, blah, blah. And that's about it. It's, oh my god, it's 44 minutes, and it's long, and it's boring, and she really doesn't say much of anything. And I thought I'd end this video by taking a look at some comments that I found about this video on Reddit, because I think they provide a little more insight from people who are more familiar with Sara and her background and her usual content. I found this one very revealing. No secret that her parents are rich, and it's no secret that she doesn't work, so I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that her parents are funding her lifestyle. I think this is a big contributor to how incredibly out of touch she is with politics, working life in the UK, and her demographic of young people trying to find their place in a world that is getting increasingly more difficult to scrape by in every day. When you work and are living paycheck to paycheck, and the majority of our generation are, it becomes very hard to care about things like cancel culture and how offended everyone is all the time. Your attention is really driven towards real politics, not the social media politics she talks about, the news and new policies, as you're desperately hoping for a sign things might get better for you. She's so incredibly out of touch it verges on satire. And yeah, I can absolutely see this being the case if this is true of her background. I come from like a proper working class background and family. I said before, my mum was a part-time supermarket worker, my dad used to work in factories before he got made redundant. We had less than 5 figures a year to live on as a whole family with 3 kids and 2 grandparents living with us, so that was fun. Sara talks about in the beginning of this video how she doesn't even really know how her parents vote, what they do. They didn't talk about politics growing up and this sort of thing. I'm like, good for you, but we had to in my family. It was necessary to getting by, you know? I had to learn early on because without stuff like benefits, without the NHS, we wouldn't have had food to eat, we wouldn't have had a school uniform for me to go to school in, I wouldn't have been able to get my repeated dental problems fixed and all that stuff. I needed to be aware of the politics because it affected me in my daily life. We wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for the Labour Party helping families like mine back in the 90s, you know? And nowadays when I choose who to vote for, I'm not looking at the issues and policies and values that Sara brought up in this video. I don't care what a politician thinks about children's books using the word fact, or if they like Ricky Gervais, or any of that stuff that she brought up. I'm looking for what their actual plans are for the NHS, how they're going to help families that were like mine when I was growing up, how they're going to give our future generations a good education, are they keeping vulnerable people and minorities safe, are they going to finally tax the rich properly, what are they doing to help our environment? They're the issues I genuinely care about. They're the issues that help me decide who I'm going to vote for. They're the issues that decide my political beliefs, my ideologies, my values. I don't know Sara or her background personally, but I think her approach of like, boo-hoo, comedians are so oppressed and shamed because they can't tell a joke anymore, and I'm not oppressed, so I'm not a feminist, is just very much a result of privileged, sheltered, self-centered thinking. And it bothers me and it makes me angry, and that's why I think I've been snarkier than normal in this video, because I think the thing is, like, when I look at someone, like, say, let's say when I respond to someone like classically Abby, I can be like, well, you know what, she comes from a very different background to me, I can understand why she maybe has a different way of thinking. But like someone like Sara, from the looks of her Instagram, she lives in Liverpool, right? That's like up north, like where I grew up. We probably grew up in pretty similar circumstances. Like, we both had the same opportunities available to us from the government. We're only like 5 years apart in age, right? We probably had similar opportunities available to us through the government. She probably had a bit of a better upbringing than me, like financially and with her parents and stuff like that. But we're not that different. And the fact that she can be so ignorant and thoughtless and selfish, despite not being all that different from me, is something that bothers me and angers me, and it's why I'm responding like this, because, you know? Another person posted this comment on her video, and I think the line that stood out to me was, "You're dismissing 50% of the political spectrum because of some chronically online extreme teenagers without actually looking at what is actually happening in the real world," and I think that seems pretty accurate too. I was talking to Elise the other day, and I said something along the lines of, like, do you think this job's making us cynical, or something like that? And we were discussing like bad books and that sort of thing, and I can't remember exactly what the words were, but the gist of the conversation was basically something like, because we spend so much of our time working and like reading bad books, harmful books, watching awful videos, debunking misinformation, talking about people with these extreme views and stuff like that, are we risking that making us kind of like a little bit cynical and sort of skewing our views of the world a little bit? And so we ended up talking about like how important it is to remember that we spend a lot of the time looking at either end of the spectrum, the really, really good and the really, really bad, the extremes at either end. And it's important to remember that there's so much stuff in the middle. There's so much of a grey area, you know? So we have to make sure we don't get locked into just looking at these extremes, and we make sure we go out into the real world and we experience things for what they are, we see things for what they are, we see real people, and we don't slip back into this black and white thinking, and we don't let the bad stuff get us down, and we don't let our hopes get too high on the good stuff and all that stuff, you know? Maybe that's something Sara needs to do too. Stop getting your political information from TikTok and teenagers, and maybe get out into the real world a bit, you know? And then finally, I just found these comments quite funny. It's the audacity for Bun to say she knows nothing about politics, but then go and align herself with a political party because of internet culture. And then someone replied to this: "She's gone out of her way previously to explain that she doesn't understand politics or cares about them. Now all of a sudden she puts on a blazer and takes down the brain posters and thinks she can grift her way into a political commentary career with no background or experience of any of it." And that's kind of the thing, isn't it? God's sake. So yeah, they're my thoughts on that video. Thank you for suggesting it. I hope this video wasn't too snarky or angry. Like I say, it bothers me that someone who had all the same opportunities that I had growing up and more can be so ignorant and thoughtless. And it bothers me. It worries me. It is making me quite angry and upset. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, by making this video, I know she's probably never going to see it. I know she's probably not going to care. I know even if she does see it, she's probably not going to change her mind, because people like her don't listen to people like me. I know, I went to school with them. But I'm not making this video for her. I'm making it for everyone else who might be listening to her, who might believe her. Hopefully I want to try and correct some of her misinformation, and I'd like you guys to do it in the comments as well. Particularly her points about transgender people and medication and healthcare and stuff like that. I'm sure there are many of you in the comments who have far more experience of that than me, and can probably offer some more corrections and insights and some resources and stuff for people who want to find out more and help correct the misinformation she was spreading. So if you want to leave some comments about that, please do, or anything else I've covered in this video. But for now, thank you so much for watching today. I do appreciate you a lot. If you would like to say screw you to Sarah and her anti-feminist beliefs, then you can check out my brand new merch that I have available now, including these really cool feminist designs. I have this amazing I'd rather be reading t-shirt that I absolutely love. You can also get it as a sticker, because, you know, some of us do actually read the books we talk about, Sarah. It helps. And oh my god, I'm so snarky. I'm sorry. What is wrong with me? Oh my, I think I'm gonna go eat a chocolate bar and calm down. God's sake. Okay, I'm gonna end this before I get snarkier, because who am I right now? God, sorry. Okay, that's me done. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you a lot. Please subscribe if you're new here. Go follow me on Instagram, because that's where I'm most active on social media. And yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate you a lot. And I'll see you again soon. Mr. Motorbike. It's quite loud. Bye, everyone.